breakaway region of Somaliland has infuriated the government in Mogadishu and prompted concerns it will further destabilize the Horn of Africa region. Outrage in Kenya over the rise in femicide cases as thousands march and hold protests to call for urgent government action. And beekeepers turn away from honey and harvest venom instead, which is popular in alternative medicine. World of Africa at these times only on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Where will America hit next? Where will it strike to avenge the deaths of its soldiers? 3 American soldiers have died in a drone strike in Jordan. Here is where the drone struck: Tower 22. It is a military outpost in northeastern Jordan. It is near the Al-Tanf garrison. A number of American troops are stationed there to help fight the Islamic State, or whatever remains of it. Like you can see, the location of this camp is very close to the Syrian and the Iraqi borders. The drone struck this outpost early in the morning. 3 American soldiers died, 34 others were injured. At least 8 of them had to be moved out of Jordan for medical treatment. What happens next is anybody's guess. This is not the first attack on American interests in West Asia. Militant groups in the region have hit or tried to hit American interests at least 150 times since Hamas's October 7 attacks. At least 150 times. Several American troops have been injured in these 150 attacks. A lot of American troops suffered traumatic brain injuries, in fact. But never before had American troops died in this latest West Asia conflict as a result of an enemy strike. This drone strike has changed the rules, basically, of engagement. The Islamic resistance in Iraq is claiming responsibility. And what do we know about the Islamic resistance in Iraq? This is an umbrella organization of militia groups. It has sparked a fire that stands to engulf the entire region, probably even the wider world. US President Joe Biden was in South Carolina when he was informed about the attack. He got onto a call with the US Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, and the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. In a post on the platform X, Biden said, and I'm quoting now, "We will hold those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing." And later in the day, Biden discussed the attack with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Charles Q. Brown, and the Director of National Intelligence, Evergrande Haynes. Biden reiterated his pledge to avenge the attack during a visit to a church. Let's just play that out for you.
I want to point out that we had a tough day last night in the Middle East. We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases.
Yes.
I'd ask you for a moment of silence for all 3 of those fallen souls.
Just look at what Lloyd Austin is saying. The president and I will not tolerate attacks on American forces, and we will take all necessary actions to defend the United States, our troops, and our interests. What will these measures be is the question. In the last few weeks, the US has hit Houthi targets in Yemen. On the 12th of January, in fact, American and British forces hit over a dozen targets in Yemen. And ever since, the US has struck Yemen at least 8 times. The US has also hit Iran-backed militants in Iraq. An American drone strike has killed militia commander Mushtaq Jawad Qazim al-Jawari in Baghdad on January 4. Where will America hit next? Iran? Tehran has denied playing any role in this drone attack, in fact.
Repeating baseless accusations against Iran is the projection and conspiracy of those who see their interests in dragging America's feet into a new battle in the region and inciting it in the expansion and escalation of the crisis to cover up their problems. Resistance groups in the region do not take orders from the Islamic Republic of Iran in their decisions and actions.
Resistance forces is a code that Iran often uses for the militias it supports across West Asia. They are the soldiers of Iran's proxy war. The Islamic resistance in Iraq is one such group. Did Tehran really not know about this drone attack? Well, that's hard to believe. Here's what appears to be the case. With this drone strike, what Iran is essentially doing is testing where the line is. How far can it go in attacking American interests? How much can Iraq get away with? This is no doubt a major escalation in the West Asia war. What happens next? Where will America strike to avenge the death of its soldiers? What really are Joe Biden's options? Option 1. America can carry out more broad and intense strikes on Iran-backed groups, on their camps in Syria, Iraq. But will that be a revenge enough? Will it actually help to stop the attacks on American interests? Will it help silence the militia groups? Some members of the Congress want more. Republicans are accusing Biden of letting American forces become sitting ducks. Here's what the US Senator Tom Cotton is saying. I'm quoting, "The only answer to these attacks must be devastating military retaliation against Iran's terrorist forces, both in Iran and across the Middle East." And this is Mike Rogers. He leads the US Military Oversight Committee, and he is calling for an attack on Iran. I'm quoting, "It's long past time for President Biden to finally hold the terrorist Iranian regime and their extremist proxies accountable for the attacks that they have carried out." But the question is, can the Pentagon really afford to go to war with Iran? That's option number 2. A strike on Iran could trigger an all-out conflict. And the absence of such a strike is becoming a question mark on Biden's leadership. In fact, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell wants Biden to, quote-unquote, exercise American strength to compel Iran to change its behavior. And then you have Donald Trump. He is claiming that the strike is a, quote-unquote, consequence of Joe Biden's weakness and surrender, adding, I'm quoting, the attack would never have happened if I was president. Well, it goes without saying there is political pressure on Biden to respond, and it is essentially a catch-22. If America goes to war, it will lose men, money. What about allies? Biden's persistent support of Israel has already cost America. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have not joined America's Red Sea Task Force, remember. Will they want an all-out American war in their backyard? If Biden does not go to war, he risks losing reputation. So what will it be? Remember, the US president is currently also a presidential candidate. Biden is seeking re-election, and chances are, come November, Biden will be facing Trump. It's a tough rematch, to say the least. Will Biden drag the US into another forever war to win this rematch? Will Biden intensify the war to save his political skin? We will keep you posted. And there is a lot happening in the high seas. An American warship has reportedly been attacked. An Iranian vessel has been rescued by the US Navy. Let's just go through all of these developments one by one. The Houthis claim they have attacked USS Louis B. Puller in the Gulf of Aden. They say they have launched a rocket. The Houthi spokesperson, Yahya Sari, said the attacks will continue until the aggression is stopped and the siege is lifted on the people of Palestine in the Gaza Strip. The Houthis have given no evidence of the attack, and the United States has outrightly rejected the claim. Let's just tell you a little bit about the USS Louis B. Puller. It is America's mobile US-based siege. The ship serves as a floating landing base. It has been stationed in the Red Sea and tasked with ensuring the safety of commercial ships passing through the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Remember, we told you the story of the US Navy SEALs raiding an UN-flagged ship on the 11th of January. The SEALs had used the Puller as their mobile base. This vessel is 784 feet long. It has a 52,000 square foot flight deck, fuel and equipment storage, repair spaces, magazines. The vessel can basically accommodate up to 250 personnel. It can support air mine countermeasures, support counter-piracy operations, maritime security operations, also humanitarian and disaster relief missions. The USS Louis B. Puller was the first U.S. ship, in fact, to be commissioned outside the U.S., and it appears to have become the latest ship to have come under attack in the high seas. And attacks in the high seas have become the new normal. Warships to commercial vehicles, they are either being hit by the Houthis or being hijacked by the Somalian pirates. Between the Houthis and the Somalian pirates, it's a deadly combination. Neither has anything to lose, but a lot of loss to inflict. And time and again, one country is coming to the rescue of the distressed ships. One country is providing security, helping the vessels fight the terror in the high seas. India. It is India that is time and again responding to the SOS calls. The Indian Navy has been rescuing ships caught in the crossfire of the high seas conflict, and one such incident came to light today itself. An Iranian fishing vessel was hijacked by Somalian pirates. The boat's name? FV Iman. There were 17 fishermen on board. Somalian pirates boarded that ship along the east coast of Somalia. The ship's crew was taken hostage. The distressed ship sent out an SOS message, and the Indian Navy responded. INS Sumitra intercepted the ship. ALH Dhruv choppers on board the Indian warship encircled the hijacked vessel. Indian commandos issued a warning to the pirates, asking them to back off. The pirates were disarmed, told to move towards Somalia. The hijacked vessel was sanitized and released for onward transit. And over the weekend as well, the Indian Navy carried out a daring operation. The Houthis had attacked a British oil tanker in the Gulf of Aden. The tanker, MV Marlin had caught fire. There were 23 crew members on board, 22 Indians and 1 Bangladeshi national. The distressed vessel sent an SOS. And INS Vishakhapatnam responded to its call. 10 Indian personnel boarded the burning vessel with firefighting equipment and helped douse the flame. American and French personnel joined the operation. In a video, Captain Abhilash Rawat, the master of MV Marlin Luanda, thanked the Indian Navy. In the first week of January, a Liberian-flagged vessel, MV Lila Norfolk, was in distress. The vessel was carrying cargo from Brazil to Bahrain when 5 to 6 armed men were trying to hijack the vessel. There were 21 crew members on board, including 15 Indians. The ship sent out an SOS message and the Indian Navy responded. An Indian Navy aircraft issued a warning to the pirates. The armed men fled the ship and the Indian Navy's elite Marcos commandos boarded that ship, sanitized it and rescued the distressed crew. Here's a video. On the 23rd of December, another Liberian-flagged vessel was attacked. It was on its way to Mangalore, India, from Jubail, Saudi Arabia. The vessel was attacked by a drone. A fire broke out. The vessel was damaged. There was a total power failure. The Indian Navy was quick to respond. A Navy aircraft, a warship, and a Coast Guard ship were diverted to help the distressed ship. The tanker was then safely escorted to Mumbai. India has responded to these incidents by increasing its deployment in the high seas. India currently has nearly 12 warships on anti-piracy and maritime security operations in the Arabian Sea and the Gulf of Aden. There are Indian destroyers, Indian frigates at sea to assist the merchant vessels in case of an emergency. There are Indian aircraft, drones ensuring safety and security of the vessels in the Indian Ocean. India is helping the vessels, irrespective of which flag they are sailing under, irrespective of the nationalities of the crew members. Indian commandos are risking their lives to save those stranded at the sea. India is carrying out daring missions without flexing its muscle. The Indian Navy is following protocol, acting as per the established SOPs amid all the rage on the high seas, amid all the terror, the escalation and the crossfire. India is the one proving to be a force for good. India has become the savior on the high seas and the net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. And let's now shift our focus to the Maldives. A few weeks ago, we were the first to ask you, will President Mohammad Muizzu's anti-India moves cost him his job? Now, it looks like our impression was dead on. It looks like Muizzu is paying the price for cozying up to China because Maldivian lawmakers want him out of office. According to reports, the main opposition party of the Maldives, the Maldivian Democratic Party, is all set to file an impeachment motion against Muizzu. According to local media reports, the opposition has garnered enough signatures to file an impeachment motion. The motion will be submitted in the parliament soon. A total of 34 lawmakers, which includes representatives from the MDP and the Democrats, have backed this motion for impeachment, but it looks like the noose is tightening around Muizzu. You see, since coming to power in November last year, Muizzu has tried to redraw the Maldives' equation with India. And under his administration, the country's ties with the traditional ally India have sharply deteriorated. To us, this is not surprising. After all, that's what happens when you mollycoddle China. But there will always come a day of reckoning because the political class in the Maldives is livid and they want Muizzu out. They want him out so bad, in fact, that chaos erupted in the country's parliament on Sunday. Just have a look at these visuals. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Maldivian parliament. And these are Maldivian lawmakers fighting like wild animals on the floor of the house. In video clips from Sunday that have now gone viral, lawmakers can be seen fist fighting, hair pulling and kickboxing each other. It looks like a boxing ring, but these are men and women in suits and ties. They are democratically elected by the people of the Maldives. The fight took place between MDP MP Isa and PNC MP Abdullah Shahim Abdullah Hakim. In one video, Shahim can be seen gripping Isa's leg before they both fall down. In another video, Isa can be seen kicking Shahim's neck and pulling his hair. The fight got so violent that an ambulance had to be called in after members suffered injuries. The chaos disrupted the proceedings of the day. A key vote on parliamentary approval for the Muizzu government was scheduled to take place on Sunday. Recently, two opposition parties have protested against the Muizzu government's anti-India pivot. The opposition parties have jointly issued press statements labeling the shift in the foreign policy as extremely detrimental to the Maldives' long-term development. They underscored that stability and security in the Indian Ocean is vital to the stability and security of the Maldives. They get it, but Muizzu, unfortunately, does not. And despite the backlash, Muizzu is not showing any intention of making things any better with India. In fact, he has doubled down, especially since he upgraded the Maldives' ties with China. Last Friday, in fact, as India celebrated the Republic Day, the Maldivian government sent a low-level official to attend the celebrations hosted by the Indian High Commission in the Maldives. This, you see, is in stark contrast to what's happened in the past, where presidents of the country attended the annual event. Last year, former President Ibrahim Solih had made it a point to attend the event. He was, in fact, one of the first Maldivian leaders to wish India on the 26th of January. For the first time, no senior minister was present at the reception event. And the absence of President Muizzu or any senior Maldivian political leader for that matter suggests that Muizzu's office was sending out a message to New Delhi. Now, we should tell you, Muizzu did extend his greetings to India on Republic Day. An official statement released by his office referred to the centuries-old friendship between the two countries. He said it was founded on mutual respect and a deep sense of kinship. Those were his words. But does Muizzu actually mean that? It looks like he needs to be reminded. He is the one who wants Indian personnel in the Maldives to leave. He is the one who wants the Indian personnel primarily posted there for humanitarian and disaster relief out. He is the one who tried to mobilize domestic political bases by targeting India. He is the one who decided not to renew a pact for a hydrographic survey with the Indian Navy. He is the one who decided to snub India and visit China first for bilateral engagements. At a time when the world is getting more and more disillusioned with China's BRI, and as China's own economy is facing headwinds, Muizzu is the one singing to Beijing's tune. New Delhi, meanwhile, has shown maturity. India kept its cool even when Muizzu's ministers made derogatory remarks against the Indian Prime Minister. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar asserted politics is politics and it cannot be guaranteed that in every country, every day, everybody will support us or agree with us. If the Indian soldiers there are seen as a greater threat than 37% of the Maldives' total debt that it owes to China, then it is for the people of the Maldives to decide. Has Muizzu gone completely China crazy? Which From a foreign leader going crazy for China, we turn to a Chinese company's crazy downfall. I am talking about Evergrande, the debt-laden Chinese property giant. 5 months after filing for bankruptcy, it has now been ordered to liquidate. You heard that right. Evergrande has been asked to abolish its operations by a Hong Kong court. The decision has been taken after an 18-month-long hearing. Now, this is a tragic fall from grace for Evergrande. You see, the company was once the second largest property developer in China in terms of sales. In fact, in the year 2018, it became the most valuable real estate company in the world. Cut to the year 2021, and Evergrande became the poster child of China's real estate crisis. It earned the title of the world's most indebted property developer with about $300 billion in liabilities. And now it has failed to convince a Hong Kong court that it has a viable restructuring plan. This is after the company was given 7 extensions since the court proceedings were first brought against it in June 2022. However, reports saying Evergrande can still appeal. But the question is, what led to the company's downfall? How did it become so indebted? How did things reach this point? And what happens next? Let's find out. Now, to start with, what exactly is liquidation? Well, it is a process where a company's assets are seized and sold off. The proceeds can then be used to repay the outstanding debts. That said, whether this process is actually executed depends on the Chinese government. Also, the liquidation order does not necessarily mean that Evergrande will go bust and collapse. And this brings us to a bigger question. Why is Evergrande in trouble in the first place? And why has it been asked to liquidate? Well, it's primarily because the company borrowed more than $300 billion during its growing years. And the trouble started when China drafted new rules to control the amount owed by big real estate developers to keep its business afloat. After these rules, Evergrande offered its properties at major discounts to keep the money flowing in. But it struggled to meet the interest payments on its debts and lost 99% of its value in the last 3 years. Unable to repay the interest on its loans, the company formally defaulted in December 2021. It was given time to come up with a plan to repay its debts that suited its creditors, but this did not happen. And analysts are now skeptical if any of the debt will actually be repaid in full. ever. So what happens to Evergrande now is the immediate question. Well, the court has ruled that Evergrande's boss, Hui Ka-yan, who is under criminal investigation, would no longer control the company. It added that Evergrande's broader management would be revamped in a bid to ease the fears of the creditors. And besides this, the court will also appoint a body tasked with liquidating Evergrande's assets in Hong Kong. The company, however, insists that its operations in the mainland will be unaffected by the decision. Next question. Will this decision affect China's economy? Not really. Analysts say Evergrande's legal troubles are unlikely to spark a lot of concern on the mainland. They say that the impact would have been evident when the company went bankrupt, and the disintegration of its dead husk is unlikely to do much either. But Evergrande's woes have become emblematic of a years-long crisis in China's property market, a crisis that is reverberating throughout the world's second-largest economy. In fact, it has left many home buyers waiting for their new properties. Many of them have even taken to social media sites, such as Weibo, to share their frustration about the property developers. They fear that Evergrande's fall may trigger a domino effect, where more property giants fall one by one. And since we are discussing fights, how can we not discuss the latest fight brewing in Asia? A fight between Iran and Pakistan. The two countries have been engaged in an intense face-off for quite some time now. Over the weekend came a new flashpoint in the ongoing brawl. 9 Pakistani workers were gunned down in Iran, and at least 3 others were injured. The incident unfolded in Saravan, a city located in the Sistan-Balochistan province. The workers in question were killed when unidentified attackers opened indiscriminate fire on them on Saturday. According to eyewitnesses, the attack unfolded inside a house in the Sirkan neighborhood of the Sistan-Balochistan province. Back in Pakistan, the families of the victims are mourning their loss. They are asking the Pakistani government to repatriate the bodies and hand them over to the relatives.
Our relatives worked as laborers and have been living in Iran's city of Saravan for the last 8-10 years. My other nephew, who was injured in the firing, told me on the phone that around 3 a.m. or 3:30 a.m., 3 terrorists came and asked them to get up and wanted to know who among them were Pakistanis. They opened fire and killed 9 of them.
We ask that the Pakistani government repatriate the bodies and hand them over to the relatives. Those injured should also be brought to their relatives so that their wounds can heal.
So who was behind the attack? Well, so far, no group or individual has claimed responsibility, but authorities suspect the role of Baloch separatists. And that is because the deadly attack follows tensions in the porous border region of the province. Also, Sistan-Balochistan is one of the few mainly Sunni Muslim provinces in the Shiite-dominated Iran. It has seen persistent unrest involving cross-border drug smuggling gangs and rebels from the Balochi ethnic minority. What adds to the speculation is the recent strikes and the number of recent strikes. You see, on the 18th of January, Pakistan launched airstrikes on militant targets in Iran. The strikes unfolded 2 days after Iran launched similar strikes on its territory. The target in both the cases being Baloch militant groups. So it is being perceived that the same groups could be behind the killing of the Pakistani workers. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Foreign Affairs Ministry has issued a statement. It says, and I'm quoting, "It is a horrifying and despicable incident, and we condemn it unequivocally. We are in touch with Iranian authorities and have underscored the need to immediately investigate the incident and hold to account those involved in this heinous crime. We are fully seized of this grave matter and are taking all necessary measures in this regard." the embassy will do its best to repatriate dead bodies at the earliest. Such cowardly attacks cannot deter Pakistan from its determination to fight terrorism. Now, isn't that a bit rich coming from Pakistan? Talking about its determination to fight terrorism? I mean, the country itself has promoted terror for decades now. For Islamabad, Baloch separatists are terrorists, but those carrying out attacks along India's borders are seemingly not. It is this hypocrisy which seems to have landed Pakistan in this precarious situation. It is the 29th of January, the day on which French farmers vowed to besiege Paris. The siege is already in motion. Let's just have a look at the latest visuals. The farmers are closing in on the French capital. Dozens of tractors have occupied a motorway near the city of Beauvais, which leads to Paris. And this is just one of the locations, in fact. The farmers plan to establish 8 choke points all along the major arteries to Paris. The farmers want to close all the ways to the capital city. For how long? Well, they say indefinitely. They have been protesting all through the week. But why are the farmers doing this? They are demanding better prices for their produce and safeguards against cheap and imported competition.
My son, he is no longer motivated like I was at his age. Given all the constraints we have, the paperwork, the checks, they don't have the passion I had at his age. We were going all in. Him, it no longer is the same vision. They no longer have the same vision as we had at their age. And that's a shame because we lose all this love.
This suffering in the agricultural world has to stop at some point. It frankly disturbs me that people who get up in the morning to feed others, to work, to do their job well, one day end up attempting suicide or put an end to their lives. Behind it, there are family dramas, and I believe that this should no longer exist.
You see, France planned to cut subsidies on agricultural diesel, but seeing the widespread furor, it decided to drop the plan. The French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal tried to calm down the protesters, and speaking at a farm with his speaking notes on a bale of hay, Attal vowed that the government will put agriculture above everything else. But you see, that was not enough to assuage the farmers. They still decided to continue with the planned siege of Paris. And it's not just the capital, by the way. Protests have been raging all over the country. The farmers are fuming. On Friday, they set a truck carrying peppers on fire. They also overturned it with a tractor. You have to watch this for yourself. Others lit a huge bonfire in the southern city of Montpellier. And in the northern French town of Beauvais, demonstrators held a silent gathering to pay tributes to a farmer and her daughter. The two died in the course of the protests as a car ran into a roadblock in the Ariège region. So you see, the protests are not only creating inconvenience, they are also claiming lives. In Montauban, angry French farmers set tires and waste on fire. Now, there are many sides to the issue. The French government is trying to rein in food inflation, but this has left the farmers unable to cover high costs for energy, fertilizers, transportation. The French farmers are arguing that they are not being paid enough and are choked by excessive environmental regulations. And then there are also concerns around imports. The EU has waived quotas and duties on Ukrainian imports since the war started. They don't have to meet the environmental standards as well, which other EU farmers need to. French farmers are resenting the Ukrainian imports for affecting the European prices. And this resentment is on wide display across the country. What is the French government doing about this? So far, it has maintained a tolerant stance and has promised some measures to address the issues within days. But it seems like the people in France have gone rogue. Apart from violent protests, there has also been violent climate activism. 2 activists hurled soup on the world-famous Mona Lisa in the Paris's Louvre Museum. The painting was not harmed thanks to its protective glass, but it was certainly smeared in red soup. The activists shouted, and I quote, "What is more important, art or the right to have a healthy and sustainable food system?" Now, that is one extreme way of raising a point. The visitors at the museum were left angry and confused. Listen in to what they had to say.
It's disgusting to treat art that's really valuable for the history of humankind that way.
Yes, I understand the demands 1,000 times, but on the other hand, when it comes to the link with art, I don't see why they target works of art.
Now, this was not the first time something like this has happened, and unfortunately, it will not be the last time either. This time, it was soup. In the year 2022, the Mona Lisa was smothered in cream. Vincent van Gogh's sunflowers at the London National Gallery also became a victim that same year. But where do we draw the line? How far will people go in the name of activism? Ukraine is nowhere near winning the war or reclaiming territories occupied by Russia, but vultures have already started circling in. As if that wasn't enough, far-right leaders of a NATO country want a piece of Ukrainian land. I'm talking about Hungary. Hungary's Our Homeland Party leader, Laszlo Torokzai, has declared claims to Ukraine's Zakarpattia Oblast, also known as Transcarpathia region. Torokzai has said that his party would lay claim to this western region of Ukraine if the country loses the war with Russia. In a video posted on his party's website, he called for autonomy of ethnic Hungarians in western Ukraine. He said, and I'm quoting now, "If this war ends up with Ukraine losing its statehood, because this is also on the cards, then as the only Hungarian party taking this position, let me signal that we lay claim to Transcarpathia." The statement drew applause from the crowd. He made the remarks at a conference where his party hosted far-right leaders from Germany and the Netherlands, among others. His party had 6 lawmakers in the 199-strong Hungarian parliament. Transcarpathia in Ukraine is home to about 150,000 ethnic Hungarians. This region borders Slovakia and Hungary to the west and Romania to the south. The issue of minority rights here has created friction between Hungary and Ukraine, particularly over Ukraine's linguistic policies. You see, the language law has for long been a source of strife. It requires at least 70% of education above the 5th grade to be conducted in Ukrainian. And in response to the criticism, Ukraine says it does not intend to limit the linguistic rights of its minorities. Kiev says it simply wants to ensure that all Ukrainian citizens have sufficient capability to speak the national language, which is Ukrainian. In Hungary, meanwhile, the far right have called for increased autonomy for the ethnic Hungarians in Ukraine. There has been no comment on the latest statement from Hungary, but the issue has once again highlighted the differences between NATO's Hungary and Ukraine. In December, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán expressed support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, but Budapest has often clashed with Kiev over what it says are curbs on the rights of the ethnic Hungarians living in Ukraine. And these curbs are reportedly over their use of their native tongue. Hungary, for that matter, is also part of the European Union, but often clashed with both EU and the NATO over Ukraine's bid to join the bloc and over wartime aid for Kiev. Last month, all European Union states except Hungary agreed to start EU accession talks with Ukraine, but the EU leaders bypassed the Hungarian Prime Minister's opposition. How exactly? By getting him to leave the room when the decision was made. Still, EU leaders could not overcome his resistance to revamping the EU budget. It would have helped channel 50 billion euros to Kiev. And now the EU has warned Budapest. Brussels had threatened to hit Hungary's economy if Prime Minister Orbán vetoes Ukraine aid. Now, this is significant. The EU has threatened its own member state with dire consequences if any attempt is made to block fresh aid for Ukraine. It is part of a confidential plan drawn up by Brussels that marks a big escalation in the battle between the EU and its most pro-Russian member state, Hungary. Our next story is about the Indian Army. There has been a declining trend when it comes to fitness standards. As it turns out, some members of the Army are not at the peak of their health. They are obese, unfit, or plagued by lifestyle diseases. But the Indian Army wants to change this. It has implemented a new policy. What is it all about? Let me break it down for you. Now, to begin with, there will be additional tests along with the existing ones. As of now, the Army conducts two kinds of tests to check if the officers are physically fit. There is a Battle Physical Efficiency Test, or BPET, and then there is a Physical Proficiency Test, or PPT. Now, under the BPET, individuals need to complete a 5-kilometer run, a 60-meter sprint, climbing using a horizontal rope, also a vertical rope, and crossing over a 9-foot ditch within a specified time, which depends on the age. In the physical proficiency test, there is a 2.4-kilometer run, a 100-meter sprint, 5-meter shuttle, push-ups, chin-ups, sit-ups. A swimming test is also conducted if a pool is available. These tests are conducted quarterly. Now, under the new policy, a 10-kilometer speed march, a 32-kilometer route march have been added. These tests will be conducted every 6 months. Along with that, there will be an annual 50-meter swimming proficiency test. Not only are there new tests, they will also be more stringently monitored. Earlier, a commanding officer handled the quarterly tests, and now a minimum rank of a brigadier, along with 2 colonels and a medical officer, will be overlooking them. As for those giving the tests, all personnel will have to maintain an Army Physical Fitness Assessment Card. And this assessment card will keep a track of their performance and will be linked to their annual confidential report. And what happens to those who fail to meet the mark or fall into the overweight category? Well, they will have to redeem themselves. They will receive written counseling and will get 30 days to improve. Their leaves and tutorial courses will also be restricted. Overweight officers will receive written directions to reduce weight, and if they fail to do so, there will be further disciplinary actions. And by the way, this is not the first time something like this is being done. In the year 2018, the Army made it compulsory for every officer's annual report to have their 2 latest photographs, one from the front and another of the side profile. This was to keep the officials' weight in check. The move motivated many personnel to go beyond their daily training. Some joined the gym, others started doing power yoga, some even started following the new concept of Chi running, which was based on martial art Tai Chi. And back in the year 2013, the Army came up with a new diktat for the officers above the age of 50 years. It was no fitness, no promotion. You see, after crossing 50 years, military officers were no more subjected to regular fitness tests. Those in the higher ranks felt this had become counterproductive. More and more officers were reporting lifestyle diseases, and this included obesity, pre-hypertension conditions, dangerously high levels of bad cholesterol. But that soon changed as the officers' promotion depended on their fitness. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Kampir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the